It's Tuesday, and that means it's time for terror!
Well, ramblers, let's get rambling, I playfully said to my group of friends as I loaded the last of our supplies in the back of my old Chevy truck. Man, I've been looking forward to this trip for weeks. Can't wait to roast some marshmallows and sip some whiskey, replied Tom. His girlfriend Sarah and mine Jane hopped in the back of the cab, laughing at Tom's abundant enthusiasm. This better be a primo camping spot, Jimmy, said Sarah to me as I put my key into the ignition. Ladies, don't you stress a damn thing. This is going to be a camping experience you'll never forget, I chimed in. It took us a few hours of driving to get from beautiful Terrace, BC, up to Sleeping Beauty Mountain, but man, was it ever worth it. We took rickety old logging road after logging road up the mountain, just enjoying the natural beauty and scenic wonder that northern BC had to offer. The sun shined brilliantly overhead, and we spotted a black bear and her cubs around the 2-hour mark of our journey. Would you look at that, exclaimed Jane from the back seat as I slowed down so everyone could enjoy a gander at this majestic creature and her cute cubs before us. Around 4 p.m. we finally arrived at our destination at a clearing just off an old trail halfway up Sleeping Beauty Mountain. My dad said back in the 80s him and his friends used to camp out here. I'd never been up here before, but the gnarled old growth pine in the center of the clearing let me know we had made it to the right spot. Tom promptly hopped out and started to unload our gear. Sarah and Jane said they would collect rocks to form a fire pit, and I headed just past the clearing into the forest to collect some firewood. The sun shone brightly through the canopy above me, and I thought to myself, it really doesn't get much better than this. As I picked up assorted limbs and branches from the forest floor, I suddenly felt a strange sensation in my back. I turned slowly, feeling as if eyes were upon me, but saw nothing amongst the pines. The quietness of the forest unnerved me for a few seconds before I shook it off and returned to the group. Tom already had his and Sarah's tent set up and a couple of camp chairs. Jane was doing her best to put the pegs through our tent, but not having much luck. Here now, let me lend a hand, I said to her. Listen here, Buster, I'm a strong, independent woman, and no man has to help me with this stupid tent, replied Jane jokingly. Everyone laughed and giggled, and I backed off with a shrug, heading over towards the fire pit to get the fire going. Before we knew it, night was upon us, and so was a healthy buzz from passing around a bottle of Canadian whiskey. The girls made marshmallows while me and Tom talked about who we thought was a shoo-in to win the Stanley Cup this season. Then we heard a strange noise from deep within the woods, just past the clearing. It sounded like someone was taking a baseball bat and cracking it as hard as they could over and over again against a tree. Weird, I thought, and looked towards where the noise was coming from. Jimmy, is there other campers out here too? I thought you said this was a spot barely anybody knew of, asked Sarah. I whistled lightly. I don't think anyone else is out here. Maybe it's just the wind, I replied, but there was no wind to be heard whipping through the forest surrounding us. Maybe it's a group of cannibalistic hillbillies, horribly mutated by radiation, that are trying to lure us into the woods, said Tom. We all groaned at that. Cannibal mutant hillbillies, Tom? Really? I replied. Man, you watch too many horror films. The knocking sound got louder. Thwack, 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 with an almost hostile vibe to it. I've had enough of your weird woods for one night, and it's pretty late, said Sarah, getting up and heading to bed. Shortly afterwards, the rest of us followed suit, since it was now going on midnight. I slept fitfully for a few hours until I was awoken by a terror-inducing sound. Something was roaring like a lion just outside my tent, a deep, resonant howl that shook you to the bones. I rolled over on my side to see Jane wide-eyed and as terrified as I felt looking back at me. The dread was real. Another roar erupted even closer this time. I tried to see through the fabric of the tent, but all I could make out was a large black shadow. Then it happened. A terrible ripping noise as something tore through the top of our tent. I could see long, powerful arms with gigantic hands that ended with sharpened claws reaching in. The arms grabbed Jane by the hair and yanked her out the tent skyward. I was frozen with fear. I could hear the beast lumbering away into the woods as Jane screamed bloody murder. Still I lay there in shock. Then more screams erupted from Tom and Sarah's tent. Finally, my trance of fear broke like a dam, and I exited my tent to see what was going down. In the dark night, a giant of a creature covered in long matted hair with glowing yellow eyes was stomping up and down on Tom and Sarah's tent. The front flap unzipped and I saw Sarah crawl out. The beast continued to stomp and scream at the top of its lungs. Sarah crawled over to me. We both gazed in terror at the hairy monster. It huffed at us and grinned, a wide, evil grin full of sharp and jagged teeth, then ran off back into the woods as quick as it came. I don't know what happened. One minute we were sleeping and the next, said Sarah, tears welling up in her eyes. I went over to their tent and found a horrible discovery. The beast, which must have been at least 8 feet tall and weighed probably 700 pounds, had stomped Tom to death. Sarah came up behind me, but I told her to stay back. She didn't just need to see that nothing but gore and broken bones remained of her boyfriend. Where's Jane? Asked Sarah. Oh God, one of them took her, I replied, sobbing. We have to find her, Jimmy, Sarah screamed at me. Okay, let me get my flashlight, I replied. And with that we headed into the darkness of the woods, seeking out my missing girlfriend. The monster that took her obviously didn't care about stealth, as we followed a path of destruction through the forest. Broken trees and scattered shrubs and large footprints led us to a cave. Scattered about the outside of the entrance were various sizes of animal bones and even a human skull. Wait here, Sarah. I'll go look for Jane, I said, trying to muster up as much courage as possible. Cautiously, and nearly pissing my pants, I entered the cave with my flashlight, barely illuminating the jagged walls. It smelled of death, rot, and decay. Deeper and deeper I walked into the cavern, following one twisting tunnel after another, until finally I came into a larger chamber. From the far corner I could hear grunting and slurping sounds. The beam of my flashlight pierced the darkness, and I saw something I wish I hadn't. One of the beasts was crouched over Jane's lifeless corpse, chewing on her remains, ripping large chunks of flesh out of her torso with its jagged teeth. I pissed myself. The beast looked up at me with its beady yellow eyes, grinned evilly, and roared like a lion. I turned and ran as fast as I could out the cave. As I exited, I tripped over something on the ground. I rolled on my side, covered in blood, only to find Sarah's mangled and half-eaten remains. Oh God, not Sarah too. Why did I think it was a good idea to leave her behind? From my left in the woods, it sounded like a locomotive was barreling down on me. I began to raise myself up to see what fresh hell was upon me, when a man screamed, "Stay down!" and the boom of a shotgun ripped through the forest. I heard the second beast howl in pain and retreat back into the depths of the woods as the shotgun fired over and over again in its direction. Gently, a hand grabbed me by my shoulder and helped me to my feet. Standing before me was a giant of a man, at least 6'4" and broad-chested, wearing the uniform of a conservation officer and holding a 12-gauge shotgun in his grasp. "We need to get out of here, as quick as possible," he said to me. I stared at him in shock. I couldn't reply, but just nodded weakly. He led me out of the forest and back to his waiting vehicle parked in the old logging road and spoke up. "You guys should have never come out here. Those fucking beasts have had a lust for human flesh for at least 30 years now that I know of. I've been hunting them as best I can for at least 15 years on my off time. They killed my brother and his family back in 2015. I nodded, not knowing what to say, or really comprehending his words. The images of my girlfriend and friends being viciously murdered by what could only be described as feral Sasquatches kept playing over and over again in my head. This was all my fault. I should never have brought them here," the conservation officer continued. "I think I killed one 2 years ago, but never found a body to confirm it. What we are dealing with is something the government has denied to exist for years now. But you seen them firsthand, didn't you?" he asked me. Again, I just nodded as he opened the truck door and buckled me in. "Trust me, this is only the beginning," the conservation officer told me with steel in his voice.
To be continued, kiddies.
The heavenly smell of baking pizza pies filled the shop as I entered. Placing toppings on a pie stood my boss Luigi, a heavy-set man with a glorious gray mustache, his apron clean as could be and a brilliant white. Luigi prided himself on being clean and tidy in his shop. "Hey, Randy, my boy, got one last delivery for you to make, a real special delivery. Out to Rosswood," he said to me. I looked at the clock on the wall. I was going on 11:15 p.m. Aw, geez, Luigi, I was hoping to clock out early tonight, I replied. Luigi finished placing the chopped pizza toppings, salami, and cheese on the pizza and replied gruffly, Randy, I make the best pizzas in all of Thornhill, and you are the best delivery driver I have ever had. Please, Randy, just one more delivery. All right, Luigi, one more delivery, I replied, resigning myself to my fate. It's going out to Rosswood. Hope you don't mind. Rosswood? Why, that's way out of our delivery zone, I said. Hey, they ordered 3 larges of Luigi's Primo Pizza. What am I supposed to say? No? That make Luigi look like an asshole. I laughed at that and agreed to deliver the pizzas, hoping the customer would give me a nice fat tip for having to go so far. And who knows, Randy, maybe it's a few real spicy girls hoping you brought the extra salami, joked Luigi. Yeah, I think that only happens in dirty movies there, Luigi, I replied to my boss. Before I knew it, I was in my shitbox of a Honda Civic, heading from Thornhill through town and on the highway out towards Rosswood. I turned on my stereo and connected to Spotify, listening to the latest song from Sons of the Sun, Fresh to Death, featuring Stunvale. These guys were a newer group that specialized in feel-good music that gets you amped up. I believe they call it high-frequency future nostalgia. I jammed out to their song as I drove down the dark and desolate highway, just wanting this night to be over. Rosswood was way out on the highway, just a village really, a few old roads, a general store, and an even older homes dotted here and there, and of course some rusty old trailers. The chances that a bunch of beautiful women were waiting for me to deliver their pizzas was slim to none, I thought. My luck would be some old miserly shut-in that tipped me in sage advice instead of cash. As my car headed down the highway, there wasn't much to be seen as midnight approached, just the vast wilderness of overgrown trees on either side of the highway, and the odd bridge over a small stream to cross. Finally, I arrived at my destination, an old 2-story house that looked like it hadn't seen any repairs or upkeep in nearly 50 years. I pulled into the driveway and noticed several delivery vans parked out front. Maybe they ran a delivery company, I thought, but as I climbed out of my car and retrieved the pizzas from the back seat, I noticed that they were vans from all different delivery companies. Weird, I thought. But I wasn't here to solve mysteries, just drop off these pizzas and get the hell out of this creepy place. I strode up to the dilapidated porch. No lights were on anywhere. No porch light, no lights coming from inside the house, nothing. Aw man, this better not be a prank order out to the middle of nowhere. Luigi would be furious if it was, and I'd be twice as mad that I got sent out here for nothing. I called out to the front door. Thornhill 2-for-1 pizza, here with your order, and was met with an eerie silence. I knocked on the door. Nothing. Great, I thought. I tried knocking again, and this time the old wooden door opened ever so slightly. I took a step back. Pizza delivery, I said into the dark night and got no reply. I really just wanted to turn around and head back to the shop, but it's my duty as a pizza delivery driver to see each order through to the end, and to the end I would see it. Hesitantly, I pushed on the door, and it creaked open on rusty hinges. I peered into the living room, but couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. I took a cautious step into the darkness, calling out for a third time, but heard no reply. Okay, screw this, I thought. I don't need no creepy shit tonight. Luigi can be as mad as he wants, but I'm not getting paid enough to deal with creepy old houses in the middle of nowhere at midnight. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw it. A faint light flickering from the stairway leading to the second floor. I stepped further into the darkened room. I stopped and listened for any sound of life in this old house. From above on the second floor, I thought I could hear someone or something scuttling at the top of the stairs. Maybe they were old and forgot they had ordered these pizzas. I was now standing in the middle of the living room, trying to see up the stairway. Pizza man! Here, got your pizzas, might want to come down before they get cold, I shouted up the stairs. The scuttling stopped. Then a weird clicking noise came from the stairway, as if a giant beetle was clicking its pincers. The floorboards creaked as a shadow appeared at the top of the stairs. An uneasy shiver took over my spine.
Fresh meat.
A low, threatening voice gurgled towards me.
Fresh meat,
it said again. Well, fresh pizzas you ordered, I replied. The sound of someone lumbering down the staircase echoed off the walls. I pulled out my cell phone and turned on the light to get a better look. I noticed a sickly sweet smell filling the air.
Tender, juicy meat,
crowed the voice as a shadow came into view. I lifted my light in my left hand, and as I did, I dropped the pizzas to the floor in shock. What the fuck was I looking at? Crouched over, halfway down the stairs, stood a sickly-looking creature, pure white with enlarged blue veins pulsating across his body. The head was malformed, and it had large bulbous black eyes that shined from my light. It was totally naked. It had no nose, just 2 slits where the nose should be, and its mouth, my God, its mouth was too wide for its head and full of razor-sharp looking teeth.
Fresh meat!
It screamed and lunged towards me. I almost tripped over my own feet, backing out the dark living room, and turned around to run. As I did, my flashlight landed on a grisly sight. Sitting on the couch were various dead bodies that looked half-eaten, wearing different delivery company uniforms. I ran for the door as the creature landed behind me at the foot of the stairs. All the while, the clicking noise increased. This can't be happening, I thought to myself as I slammed through the front door. I just gotta make it to my car and get the fuck out of here. I bolted down the stairs into my Honda Civic. I fumbled with the keys, trying to unlock the driver's door, and as I did, I felt clawed hands tighten around my throat, trying to pull me back towards the old house. I began to choke and cough as this thing's grasp tightened around my throat. I could feel its hot breath on the back of my neck.
Tasty meat for me!
It screamed into the still night air. I tried with all my might to get free of its vice-like grip, but foot by foot it was dragging me back towards my doom. Thinking as fast as my vision began to blur, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my puny pocket knife. With the desperation of a dying man, I stabbed backwards, hitting the creature in the neck. Blood exploded from its sliced artery, splattering me. The creature grasped on my throat, slackened, and let go. I didn't dare turn around, but instead jumped into my front seat and gunned it out of there as fast as I could. As I ripped down the Ross Road Highway, still in shock and terror, I didn't know what that thing was that tried to kill me, but I vowed to never take one last delivery ever again.
And now a tale I like to call The Nosy Neighbour.
It's every day, every friggin' day. I get up, I make my coffee, I go outside to have my morning smoke, and there she is waiting for me, like a cancer I can't cure. The old biddy from next door, leering at me.
Oh, is he going to work today?
She asked me for the 1,000th time, and I reply for the 1,000th time. Yes, Tabitha, I am, but you already knew that already. She cackles maniacally and stomps back into her home. It wouldn't be so bad, but it's literally the same thing, day after day. And when I come home from work, the same stupid questions and comments.
Oh, you worked a bit late today. Usually you're home by 5.
If only there was some way to be rid of her and her stupid questions forever. A man can dream, can't he? On a late November evening, I got off work and began my walk home in the brisk autumn air. A deep chill fluttered down my back as I crossed the street and waved at an acquaintance driving by. Not really paying attention, I wandered homeward, dreading the usual barrage of asinine questions from my nosy neighbor. I turned the corner and noticed something peculiar. A new shop I hadn't seen on this block before. A faded sign hung above the storefront that said Grisly Things. What a strange name for a store, I mused to myself. Just as I was about to pass the shop, something compelled me to stop and look into the store's large window. I couldn't make out much in the gloom of evening, but it looked to be filled with trinkets and stacks upon stacks of old books. What the hell? Why not, I thought, and opened the door and went inside. As I'd surmised, it was a dusty old shop filled to the brim with books, trinkets, and junk. I peered around, trying to get a better look at things in the low light of a single overhead bulb that swung lazily from the ceiling. Suddenly a bell dinged, and as if he had materialized from thin air, sat a creepy old man behind the counter. He had greasy, long gray hair and seemed to be missing most of his teeth, with a large bulbous nose with a wart on the end of it. This guy looked like he was straight out of a Tales from the Crypt comic book. He smiled widely at me and spoke in a hoarse tone.
Evening, friend. Find anything particularly to your liking?
I looked around the dark shop and shook my head. No, not really. Not unless you got something that can get rid of pesky, intrusive neighbors. I joked more to myself than the creepy-looking shopkeeper. Thump! Again, as it was summoned upon request, a dusty old book was now sitting on top of the counter. The cover looked like it was a mildewed green and brown leather.
Here at Grisly Things, we pride ourselves on always having what a customer needs most.
He crowed at me. Hesitantly, I took a step closer to the counter. What good is some crusty old book going to do me, I asked.
Oh, this is no ordinary book, friend, but an ancient tome written by the sorcerer Abdul Al-Arzad himself, the Necronomicon. It contains various formulas and incantations predating even Sumerian culture. I skeptically raised an eyebrow. Cut to the chase, buddy. How was some old spell book going to solve my problems? The shopkeeper began to flip through the old pages until landing on one with a strange yet hypnotic-looking symbol and writings on it. How to summon a Sluggerath! He smiled as if that was all the explanation I needed to hear. A slug of what? I questioned him. A Sluggerath is an entity from another dimension with an insatiable lust for human flesh. Once it's summoned and fed fresh prey, and the summoner recites the proper incantations, it vaporizes back to its home dimension. Think of it as a no muss, no fuss, permanent solution to pesky neighbors. I whistled slowly. This was getting too creepy and weird, even for me. Man-eating monsters? Sheesh. Now I heard it all, and turned to leave the shop. The creep called after me. Tell you what, friend, try the spell out for yourself. If you're not satisfied with the results, then no charge. The book is free. A free book? And all seemed like a good deal at the time. I turned back towards the counter, but the shopkeeper was gone. I looked around wondering where he went, but to no avail. It was as if he simply vanished into thin air. Quickly, I scooped up the old leather-bound book and left the creepy shop behind in the darkness of night. Like clockwork, old Biddy was waiting for me outside her door as I walked up my steps. Oh, worked a little late, did ya, eh? She inquired for the 1,000th time. Yes, Tabitha, I did, I replied. What's that you got there? Some kind of book? She leaned in and asked me. Yeah, it's about how to get rid of nosy neighbors and never mind their own business, I replied with a hint of malice and a grin. Oh, huh, she replied and slammed her door. I chuckled to myself and unlocked my door, wondering what if this silly book was true and could get rid of old Biddy once and for all. The next morning I got up and headed out with my morning coffee to have my smoke, and of course, old Biddy was already waiting. Oh, going to work, are ya? Actually, you know what, Tabitha? I'm calling in sick today. Got something real important to finally take care of, I replied. It felt like something had snapped my psyche. The constant badgering by this old woman over the years had driven me over the edge. Oh, what important thing? She asked. I smiled wickedly at her. Why don't you come over around, say, 6 o'clock and see for yourself? For once, old Biddy looked perplexed and unsure of herself. She replied and slammed her door in my face. The day was a whirlwind of activity for me. Carefully, I went over the instructions in the book on how to summon the entity to visible form. Over and over again, I checked the formula and made sure I was pronouncing the words properly. As the book instructed, I drew the intricate symbol of the Sluggerath on the cement of my basement floor. Each line perfect, I thought. Finally, it was time to summon the creature that would solve all my problems once and for all. I recited the forbidden passages over and over again, inducing a near trance-like frenzy, and then it happened. It was as if something began to shimmer in the circle on the floor and slowly take visible shape. I kept saying the words and the creature materialized. Oh my lord, what a hideous thing it was. Amorphous with no solid shape, tentacles, eyeballs, and teeth. Some parts looked like scaly, while others looked like they were covered in feathers. Truly, this was a thing straight out of H.P. Lovecraft's wildest nightmares. It oozed liquid from beneath its hulking frame and writhed within the circle, one tentacle reaching out towards me with a hungry look in its eyes. But it was as if an invisible force field stopped it dead in its tracks. The thing let out a roar of frustration and presumably hunger at being denied. I laughed to myself. I had done it. I had well and truly summoned a Sluggerath here into my basement. Now all I needed to do was lure old Biddy down here. That evening, at around 6 o'clock, I stepped out my door to find old Biddy standing by hers. Why, a wonderful evening it is, Tabitha. Yes, why, almost enchanting it is. I beamed at her, barely containing my excitement. You seem a little too happy tonight, you know that? She groaned at me, but I didn't care. Remember, Tabitha, when I said this morning about something important? Well, would you like to see something truly amazing? I asked. At that, her brow furrowed, but I could see curiosity was getting the best of the old girl.
She'd been dying to see the inside of my home for years. Would she give up the chance now that it was finally offered?
"Don't be a ding-dong. I've lived long enough to see it all," she said with a grimace.
"Oh no, neighbor. I promise this is something that will shock and amaze even you," I replied. Old Biddy looked left, then right, then sighed, and agreed to come see what had me so excited. I led her into the house and towards the basement door. "This way, Biddy, this way," I instructed, opening the basement door and letting her take the lead down the rickety old steps.
"It's awfully dark in here, huh?"
she said grumpily. Step by step, we descended closer to the waiting hungry beast. The air felt electric to me. Finally, we entered the center of the basement, and I clicked on the hanging bulb above. Old Biddy's eyes widened with terror at the sight of the Sluggerath. Its malignant eyes stared into her soul, and it snapped its many gaping mouths filled with giant sharp teeth. What? Exclaimed the annoying old lady as I shoved her into the beast. Voraciously, it bit into her and wrapped its tentacles around her limbs as it began to feast upon her flesh. Ha 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 ha! I had done it! I had finally rid myself of this nosy neighbor. No more asking me if I'm going to work. No more saying, "Oh, you're home late, aren't ya?" Triumphantly, I picked up the book to recite the final passage as old Biddy screamed in horror and desperation at her fate. The monster chewed through her flesh with ease, tearing chunks off with its spiked tentacles. Lazily, I thumbed through the old book, looking for the passage to send the hideous creature back from whence it came, to a reality beyond ours. As I flipped to where the page should be, I was overtaken with shock. The page! The fucking page to send it back was missing! It looked as if it had been torn up from the book! As if sensing my dismay, all the hideous eyes of the creature turned towards me at once with vicious glee. Where was the page? Oh God, no! That good-for-nothing shopkeeper had double-crossed me. One of the beast's tentacles stretched out towards me, breaking the barrier of the circle. I turned on my heel and ran towards the stairway as fast as I could as the beast slithered and writhed and writhed after me.
We hope you enjoyed these deliciously scary tales. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next Tuesday. Ta-ta for now.